Our federal government doesn't want anyone to know that they've had a successful program for more than 10 years in Switzerland that is now being mirrored by Germany, Holland, and other countries across Europe, where someone who is a heroin addict thinks about two things when he wakes up. One, where am I going to get my smack? And two, how am I going to pay for it?
Right.
He spends all day, all right, boosting stereos out of cars, stealing purses from little old ladies, all right, to be able to pay for that habit. And by the time he's at the end of his day, he's had enough smack and he has to go to bed, and usually he's a vagrant, or he's living, you know, he's a squatter on an old building. All right, so what the Swiss did after Needle Park was such a failure, they sequestered an area and said, if you want to deal or use drugs, do it over there. They realized that was such a mistake. That was 10 years ago. They started this program where they said, you register with us. All right, we'll first provide you with a free methadone dose.
Yep.
If you still have a problem after 2 failures on this program, then we will issue state paid for heroin. Pure, pharmacologically pure heroin that we will determine is a certain amount that's good for you that you can subsist on. And you come right to our offices and you will take it. Now this obviously is a very provocative idea. Well, what they saw immediately was a great change in their community. Vagrancy dropped through the floor. Crime and violence associated with this population was drastically reduced. And in the 10 years that the program has been together, they've had no overdoses. Now, only about 20% of the people that are in this program are actually getting heroin, all right? But the people that are getting their heroin on a daily basis are functioning addicts, just like we have in our own communities. Now, the question that a lot of people wonder about, well, gosh, now everybody's doing heroin, right? Well, the reality is that in 10 years of the program, they've reduced first-time heroin users, the number that are coming into that, quote, community, has dropped by 85% from what it was 10 years ago. So what they're doing is they realized they had a problem, and instead of using the criminal justice system as the tool, they're using public health. And in fact, that's one of my speakers always talk about. It's a lot of fun. And as by the way, I'm a civilian. I'm a retired air traffic controller. I was never involved in law enforcement, but I'm the senior staff person for the organization. I'm the operations director, and I help set up engagements, putting speakers in front of audiences.
Sure.
In fact, that's part of our trifecta of activism. One is we target civic groups, the Rotary, Kiwanis, Lions Clubs, Optimists, Elks, Masons, any place where we have a captive audience. We tried, actually other organizations in the past had tried holding events at a library, and you get 5 or 6 people come. I mean, people are very busy. You know, you're going to soccer games, you're going to basketball games, you're going to this meeting, that meeting. Well, the best thing to do is for us to be at that meeting. And we found that the civic clubs were very interested in just about any topic of discussion in the community. And they were always looking for speakers. And we obviously have a very compelling message. Lottery stand inside the store. You know what it used to be called back in the 1930s?
Number racket.
The number racket, right? Right? You had all these little kids running around town collecting numbers from people. And they were always trying to bust the numbers racket. Well, what did we do to that market? We legalized it, and now the government regulates it and controls it.
So y'all got a chapter in North Carolina?
We don't have a chapter. We don't have chapters per se, but we have people all over the United States.
We
have more than 10,000 members around the world.
Okay.
And we've only been around for about 5 years. And
so yeah, it's my first time hearing about y'all. So do y'all have like things once or twice a year that y'all make something major y'all try to do?
we do. We do presentations to the local community all the time. I have cops that could come in and talk to a community and talk to them about why this would work.
Right.
And we're trying to show legislators that this is really what people believe.
Right.
That this is what people are thinking, not this other stuff. And so we come and do presentations to civic clubs, to church congregations, and then there's big conferences we attend too. Like we were at the Black Police Officers Association conference that's coming up next week in St. Louis, Missouri. We did the National Conference of State Legislators down in New Orleans 2 weeks ago.
That's what's up.
But and then there's drug policy conferences we do too.
Just people that question what we're doing and why we're doing it when you see that, again, it's not working. It's been an experiment, but one of the things that gives me some hope, there's a court case, I believe it was back in 2005, the Supreme Court heard, and it related to federal interdiction in medical marijuana in California, which had legalized medical marijuana.
Right.
And Clarence Thomas was on the minority. He was on the losing side of this decision, but he wrote a pretty scathing dissent which said, look, what we're doing here is basically saying that at this point the federal government can regulate, you know, quilting bees and bingo games, and there's nothing that the federal government can't decide that it can regulate over and above the will of the people. And I think we're still treading on dangerous ground when we decide that the federal government from Washington can make these sort of policies in defiance of the 10th Amendment and say, you know, we're going to criminalize something even though you, the people in this community, say you want to do something differently.
Exactly. If I'm hanging drywall in my house,
sure,
and you know, you come over and you give me a nicely weighted claw hammer, well, I'll say, great tool, thanks, you know, appreciate it. But if I'm sitting out on my back porch and I'm putting a new battery into my new watch, and you give me that same claw hammer, well, obviously that's a stupid tool. Well, that's all we're talking about. Let's use the right tool for the right job. Public health instead of the criminal justice system.
So that's interesting, talking about what they're doing in Switzerland. So you're saying that as a result of having this program of legalized and regulated access, they're actually having fewer first-timers getting into the problem of addiction than they were before? Exactly.
In fact, if you look at Holland, there's another similar statistic that is very, very provocative. In the 25 to 30 years that they've had a semi-regulated distribution of cannabis, they've seen a couple things happen. First of all, they have half the usage of marijuana by the teenagers in Holland than we do in the United States. Half.
Okay.
All right. Now, people would say that it's a liberal distribution network. No, it's actually more controlled. It's regulated, semi-regulated. All right. They've also, it's no longer the forbidden fruit. Okay. Kids aren't, oh man, it's cool to smoke pot. They're seeing a difference. They're actually seeing regulated usage. All right. Now, the other significant part that's come out of this is the heroin population. The heroin population has, which was, the average age was around 19 years old 25 years ago. The heroin population is now over 40 years old on average. So they've separated the two populations, and because of the, I guess the illegal marketplace for all drugs, all right, they've separated those two, and so now they've seen where people who were getting at least an exposure to heroin no longer are.
So what's the impact of the regulation on the black market?
Well, I think that the two biggest people or groups or entities that would be opposed to a regulated marketplace are first our federal government and the drug cartels in Colombia. The drug dealers don't want the stuff regulated. In fact, you know, it's when you point that out to people and let them know who their pseudo partners are, they tend to look at it a little bit longer. They realize they're really supporting the cartels. They're supporting the organized drug gangs. In fact, I suggest, not just I, but LEAP suggests that the gang proliferation across America, MB13 and all the others, is a result of 40 years of drug prohibition. I mean, think about when we started this 40 years ago. We're fighting the war on drugs basically in the urban black community. We're arresting a lot of young black men, all right? Now, statistics show the vast majority of drug users look just like me, a middle-aged white guy. But we know that our prisons are full of young black men. So there's the war on drugs being fought there. They're going off and they're doing their prison terms. We're basically decimating the group of marriable men in the black community. So you have young boys growing up in that community. You have moms and grandmothers raising these children. They're latchkey kids because the moms are working two jobs. And when they're going through grade school, they're getting less parental supervision. So the teachers are having to triage, all right, who they're going to get through the system.
Sure.
So when that kid comes home every day, he's looking for respect. And the only people that are going to give it to him are the drug gangs on his block. Now, I know I'm speaking very generally.
Sure.
And this is not true of everyone. But certainly, as the war on drugs has continued, we've seen more. I mean, this evolution has gone through a cycle for several generations now, and so we've just, it's almost it's a badge of honor to. He's looking at my shirt, isn't he?
There he is.
He wants to come ask the question. All right. So we've got to